Okay, guys, it's 5 after 9. We'll get started. Let me share my screen here. Hang on just a moment. So my name is Brent Green. I'm the marketing director here at Rack 59. We are the host data center for the iX-Oklahoma City. That's why you guys are here today. Wanted to give you just a brief overview of what that means to Oklahoma City and what it means to Rack 59, as well as the campus that we're located on. Rack 59, again, being the host data center for the iX, we are actually on the 7725 Connect campus. It's a mission critical facility in West Oklahoma City. A couple of our partners are on here with us today. Dusty Birchfield and Sam Curtis are going to be on the call today. Sam will be talking about his relationship as a partner with the data center, as well as kind of heading up the iX for us. Robert Nordmark is here this morning. He's one of the engineers that has been really helpful in getting this thing launched as well. So without any kind of further ado, I'm going to unshare and I will let Sam take over here. Hang on, Sam, I'll give you a chance to share your screen and feel free to introduce yourself, give your little bio if you'd like, and we'll kind of go from there.
Thanks, Brent. It's great to see all these faces on here. All right, I don't know if you can see that. Looks like it's working.
Good.
All right. My name is Sam Curtis. I'm a partner at Rack 59, and I also run AtLink. I'm also the owner of an engineering firm, STS. I'm on the OpenIX committee. Eli Shearer, I don't know if you know him, but he's the chairman of that committee. I'm a council member on the Oklahoma Broadband Advisory Council. I'm the chairman of the WISPA PAC, and I'm also the WISPA Oklahoma State coordinator. So with all that, it's enough about me. The iX, you know, one thing I liked about Brent's slide is there's a motif there. If you notice, with 7725 Connect, Rack 59. Rack 59 is looking at, you know, the Telcordia 5 nines. You know, we want to be up for 5 nines. A lot of people wonder why we used Rack 59. Well, that play on the words on the Telcordia spec of 5 nines, and iX-OKC. So if you look at that, the nice thing about the data center and the real estate there, it's all about connection and data. So it all kind of really starts with the iX. And it's an internet exchange, and for those of you, I'm sure everyone on here probably knows what it is, but just so for those of you who don't, an internet exchange is essentially a router in the world of internet. You know, Oklahoma has typically kind of been just like a aggregation point historically. Like all of our data bits were shipped to Dallas or Kansas City. All the traffic was really controlled. The intelligence was out of state. And what we've done over the past decade is put in a router for the state of Oklahoma and connect that router with other interstate carriers so that we would have a little more control over what that data, how it's transmitted through the state of Oklahoma. We created the IXP in and around 2009. You know, the history of the building is really rich. It's really huge building there at 7725 Connect. They only had one connection when I got involved, and it was I believe it was Cox Communications at the time. Now we have roughly 26 fiber, if I got that number right, 26 interstate fiber physical connections throughout the to the building. What we envisioned back in 2009 was, you know, we wanted to populate the data center with people and racks, and so we thought, well, how do we do that? Well, we really caught on to the fact that we needed to connect it to the world. We needed 7725 Connect to be a major interconnection point in not in just Oklahoma, but the United States. So we envisioned, I don't know if you're familiar with Infomart down in Dallas, Texas, but we wanted to kind of replicate what Infomart did there. We wanted to make, you know, the way I explain it to people is we wanted to make a long distance call a local call in terms of internet traffic. We didn't want, we wanted to have that content as close to the eyeballs of the internet as much as we could. We wanted to encourage content delivery networks like Netflix, Facebook, Alchemy, all those companies to place their caching servers or even their content directly at 7725 Connect or Rack 59. Want to give Oklahomans a greater access, reduce the cost of transit internet peer pricing. I mean, a good example of that, when 2009, we all know that the transit pricing of dedicated internet access has gone down in Oklahoma. And I really will attribute that to the efforts at Rack 59, because we encouraged and try to get as many transit providers to interconnect and cultivated that environment. And we've really driven the price down of transit. And that benefits all Oklahomans. Primarily, it benefits the carriers. Like we've got, I think I heard Panhandle on here and some others. I mean, at least from my perspective at AtLink, you know, when I first started AtLink in 2005, I was paying, I think, $50 a meg, believe it or not, for transit pricing. And now we're looking at, you know, below 10 cents a meg. So it's pretty amazing how that's, and I really attribute that to 7725 or Rack 59 and our efforts at the iX. And I got to say, there's been an overall commitment. You know, when you look at that 2 million square foot building, it's a behemoth, and you know, some people might think AT&T, or I don't know what you think when you see it, but you know, one thing you need to realize is there's been a commitment from the owners of Rack 59 in that we haven't tried to create a burden on interconnection. We cultivated an environment where fiber cross connects are free. We're not interested in nickel and diming the carriers, you know, $150, $300 a month for pretty much a jumper. And you'll see that in other data centers and other environments. And what that does is that really kind of squashes the peering fabric or the iX fabric, and it doesn't really grow the interconnection aspect of a data center. And I'm really been proud of my partners, and we've really cultivated a healthy, free peering environment, much like zColo. Let's see here. You know, the folks at 7725 Connect have really done all the heavy lifting. You know, it's been a almost decade commitment. We've invested in a fully redundant fiber. You know, what we had to do to really connect it, you know, it was like, we always heard it's like the chicken or the egg. We hear that all the time. So we bit the bullet, and we have fiber at Rack 59 between NAT2 or Rack 59 and BOK, because, you know, historically, the 201 Robert S. Kerr Bank of Oklahoma building, it's no longer Bank of Oklahoma, it's 201 Robert S. Kerr, has been the carrier hotel for Oklahoma. And so what we did was we tethered that back to Rack 59 in a fully redundant fashion. We have completely physical redundant fiber paths, and we made that investment and cultivated that early on so that we would grow the interconnection. And that really was a good decision. And I think that's really what helped spawn, you know, everything at 201 Robert S. Kerr from an optics perspective is at 7725 Connect. It's a NEBS compliant building. You know, it was built by those AT&T engineers, and we all know what NEBS and how expensive that is. And you know, one nice other commitment that the partners at Rack 59 made is we put in our own DC power plant. And you believe it or not, that DC power plant is backed up by UPSs, and I mean, I've never seen a DC power plant backed up by a UPS, backed up by generators. So it's ultra clean power. And we've got all of the, you know, we made the investment in fiber duct and interduct inside NAT2 that makes up the iX. Currently, we have 26 interconnected fiber carriers at Rack 59. Netflix and Google physically co-located in the in Rack 59. If you come to Rack 59, that's the data center, but in the far end of the data center, there's this room, and you'll see it. It's what we call NAP 2, and that's where all of the carriers are in behind locked door with this DC power plant, all the interconnections. It's just an amazing site. I'd love for all of you guys to come and see Brent and look at it. I think you'll be impressed. One of the main reasons I wanted to do something like this is I'm on the Oklahoma Broadband Advisory Council, which advises another group that works with the legislature. So we have somewhat of an access to create some legislation and potentially some loan and grant projects. We put together a state of Oklahoma broadband plan. But one of the things that I wanted to early on start with this council is a committee for internet exchange. I wanted to cultivate that InfoMart environment in Oklahoma and feed it regularly. I mean, you can't create an IXP and then walk away and say, we created an IXP. The IXP is like a living and breathing. We've got like this child that we're growing, trying to turn it into a man or a woman. We've got to consistently feed it, and what we need to do is have monthly meetings. This meeting is kind of like casting a wide net to see what interest we can obtain from the Oklahoma IT world. But we're putting together a committee that's going to meet monthly, and it's not extremely formal. I mean, we will have bylaws and we'll have it structured, but it's going to be very informal in the sense that we want to encourage interconnection. We want to encourage people to talk about how do we aggregate our traffic. The only reason we were able to get Netflix to come and put their equipment at Rack 59 was we were able to combine. I mean, I got to give Robert a lot of credit on that, and James Deaton. I saw him on the call. They reached out to Netflix, and we added all the traffic of AtLink, Pioneer, I think Panhandle, multiple others, and then finally we got Netflix to say, okay, that's worth our time, and they sent their equipment out there. And what that did was that made these movies more accessible to Oklahomans on a broadband. You don't have to go to Dallas to watch a movie. I mean, it just increases the quality from a tier and latency perspective for the broadband users in Oklahoma. But we need your participation. I think, the nice thing, we're under a pandemic and we're having to do this Brady Bunch style online meeting, but I don't see that in the future. I see us meeting. If you've ever been out to 7725 Connect, we've got a very impressive auditorium there that AT&T used to use to crucify their management. We're gonna use that, and we're gonna have monthly meetings. And the whole idea is we want to hear from you, and we want to continue to grow this iX, and we want to shape it, sculpt it into something that is beyond what InfoMart was able to accomplish, because we're not just interested in making the connections, we're interested in helping the carriers that are interconnected at our iX succeed. That's why we've become certified at OpenIX. We're constantly making the investment in the iX to make it better, and we really want to know how that internet exchange can help you. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I'll keep it short, and I'll turn it over to Robert Nordmark. So thank you, guys.
Thanks, Sam. Everybody hear me okay? Let's see.
Yes, sir.
Let's see if I can get my sheet. Everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah, go and present your slide there, Robert.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Geez. Let me get to the proper slide. So see a lot of new faces, a lot of old faces. So the old faces will understand. For the new faces, I kind of wanted to explain what an internet exchange is and how the ecosystem works. And I couldn't find a very decent diagram or slide, so this will have to do. So essentially,
Robert,
we're taking. Sorry.
not to interrupt, Robert, but would you mind giving us a little bit of background on yourself, just so everybody knows how
Yeah,
you got
apologies.
involved and how all this came to be, please?
Yes, so my name is Robert Nordmark. I used to work for OneNet, and then I went over to Auron, and now I'm at NetFabric. Have a lot of relationships in the service provider industry because of those working relationships. I have a deep-seated need for broadband expansion in Oklahoma, and purely from an academic and education standpoint to get the kids proper bandwidth for education. But earlier in my career, back in 2012 or so, Sam, we had a peering workshop, and James Deaton was instrumental in helping us find ways to expand the IXP, and that's kind of how I got here. So to explain what the IXP is, we utilize CDNs, content delivery network servers. So Netflix, other content like that would be using servers to cache the localist, videos and movies. It's really creepy the amount of analytics they do on our Facebook and other social media to know what we're going to watch before we watch it. And they push about 5 terabytes of movies up to the servers per night. And with that, we're able to get that content locally versus going all the way to Dallas or Kansas City, because of the way that traffic is cached locally. It's able to be delivered faster to the service providers and users, as well as for the cost of just getting to Dallas and Kansas City for some service providers becomes expensive. So that's some of the necessity of the ecosystem for the internet exchange. My apologies for my raspiness. I'm currently on day 7 of COVID-19, so bear with me. But here you'll see on the diagram the Netflix servers with some settlement-free internet exchange, working with the local iX site. We peer with the ISPs and provide the content to them. So now that I kind of explained what it is and what the benefits are, we can kind of go into what it takes to join the iX. So if you guys go to the iX website, you'll see here under the iX-OKC peering policy, we have a list of our general peering policies. So some of the more important ones is, number 4, make sure that you have a public ASN issued by, Aaron. Some of the technical requirements can be found here. I won't take the time to read them, but this is just a really good landing page for what the requirements would be for this. And Sam mentioned this is a working group and committee. So going forward, all the current members, we'll get together, and we probably need to update some of these peering requirements and get them more modernized with today's exchange standards. So we'll be tackling that in our February meeting, which I'll explain later as well. Any questions so far? If I'm going too fast or too slow?
Doing great, Robert. Thank you.
So what's in the iX today? Today, we currently have some Juniper hardware, flat switch, where the current members are able to bring 100 gig connections into, 10 gig connections into to be able to peer. And then we're utilizing a software suite called IXP Manager to facilitate a lot of the the graphing as well as the details on that. So I'll click here and show you the IXP Manager and what it looks like. And if you guys want to, you can go to this URL here to be able to get to it today. So within the IXP manager, you can click the member details button to be able to see all the current members that are there. Manners, certification, there's a few members here. I want to go over that in a minute as well, explain the importance and value of that. But you can click on a member to see, the details on, not just how much capacity they have available, but, how they're connected and some other details like their autonomous system number. Some of the other features and the value of the iX is, the looking glass and the route server information that we have, both, V4 and V6. So you're able to see the looking glass information to help some of your peering and routing decisions. Pretty advantageous for members. And then, importantly, you're able to see, what type of traffic or how much traffic is coming in and out of the exchange. So as you can see here, we're hitting pretty good, 30 gigs, and typically about 11 p.m., which is, I assume, when we're watching the most Netflix at some of our service providers. And then you'll notice the increased traffic here, and I assume pandemic related in March. So it's just interesting to see some of the tools and graphs, and then you can, not just see overall graphs, but you can actually see each individual member and see how much traffic each individual member is doing. So it's pretty neat software suite. One of the things I want to talk about today was about, peering DB, and, it's kind of a phone book directory for peering. And, it's a place where people can find where exchange points are now. There's a lot more value to it than just individual service providers updating their information. So here is the peering DB page for the OKC-iX. You can see the members, their addresses, who's involved, and of course the speak policies which they adhere to within the exchange. Any questions so far? So, we haven't made this one of our policies yet, but, depending on our February meeting, this might need to be more involved, but we strongly encourage all of our members to become Manners certified. And what Manners is, for people that might not be familiar, is the mutually agreed upon norms for routing security. And click this link here and kind of talk about why it's important for an IXP. So not only do we want to be good stewards in the sense of getting more traffic local, but we also want to make sure that traffic is secure and that all the members of the iX are doing everything in their power to make sure that there, no bad traffic is being exchanged within the IXP. So the program action set is that we want to prevent propagation of any incorrect routing information. Action 2, of course, is to promote it, which we're doing today through this engagement here. You guys, I won't read this to you, but this is kind of some of the importance of why we want to make sure that all of the IXP members are Manners certified. Let's see. So,
Robert, how much work is it for the Manners certification? I saw it down at the bottom, become a member for the IXP. I mean, the ISP's listening, carriers listening. What's the effort? What's the hurdles? What is it? Go a little bit deeper on that, because I do think that in the age of where we live, as far as security goes, that this is one part that I think can make sure that, the number 4 or 3 is protect the platform. I think it will continue to be more important. You dig in on that just a little bit. We've got a little bit of time.
Yeah. So the how difficult it is start there would be is we got to make sure that your IR data is up to date. We'll go through and a lot of these are already part of the IXP in the sense of some of our technical requirements, but there's some filters and some configuration that needs to be applied to your border routers to ensure that You know, we are protecting the peering platform in that manner. And then, of course, you know, visibility and tools and making sure that everyone understands how to utilize them. So some of that, you know, in our February meeting, we're going to take a little deeper dive and go into that. So that's kind of some of how difficult it is to do, but I think, you know, the value is evident, you know, after we see a lot of the stories where, you know, specific telcos are advertising, you know, Google in India, and it kind of crashes down a lot of the communication platforms. So there's just a lot of necessity and need there. So hopefully that answered some of that.
Thank you.
Hey, Robert, could you touch on what the IXP would mean to say, if you're not an ISP, what the IXP would mean to say an enterprise business from a CDN standpoint? Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so and are you talking about like if they don't have their own AS system number?
Yeah, so if they are, so let's say you're a larger enterprise, maybe you do have a large enough network that you are doing some transport, maybe even you have an ASN. But CDNs, maybe like a Salesforce or content delivery that's designed for an enterprise environment versus, say, an ISP.
Yeah, so you know, here one of the strategies we have for our next meeting is there at the bottom, the new CDNs and strategic planning. So you know, earlier Sam, you know, talked about the aggregation and how we couldn't get some of these content delivery networks to put in servers until we kind of came together and you know, aggregate bandwidth and kind of shown how much we were, you know, utilizing at each one of our networks. Very similar to the enterprise side. So if there's CDNs that, you know, the IXP members, so Salesforce, for example, you know, Microsoft, others, how we can kind of utilize some of the peering in the past to facilitate getting CDNs here to assist the members. That's going to be one of our main goals of the iX, is to find out, you know, what people have interest in and how we can kind of facilitate that interconnectivity to make it more, you know, affordable as well as readily available to Oklahomans. Does that answer your question there, Ben?
Point out just before people drop off is, and sorry to interrupt, Robert, but if you're a Connect America Fund or RDOF, FCC participant, there's a requirement for testing your network from a tier and latency perspective, depending on how you bid in those auctions. And iX-OKC is a qualified IXP to make that test. So it's going to help your carrier meet its tier and latency requirements, because you can test your bandwidth and latency back to Rack 59. And so I just wanted to make sure, I meant to put it on a slide, and it's pretty important. So sorry about that, Robert.
No worries. Any additional questions?
This is probably a good time to go into a Q&A portion. If you have a question.
Just real quick, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Next meeting on the 25th, we want to do it possibly in person. We want to give a tour of not just 7725 data center, but, you know, the iX in general. So that's kind of one of the goals there in the 25th meeting. A lot of that will obviously, you know, depend on where we're at as far as the pandemic and other things. And then we'll probably do it around the same time and try to stay in line with the OBAC and just be right before the OBAC meetings. We want to kind of review, like I said, review those policies and updates that we have within the peering policy. We'll kind of take a deeper dive on the IXP manager and the software and make sure that the current members, you know, have logins and understand, you know, their full capabilities within the IXP manager software. And then, of course, you know, new business in the sense of strategic planning and finding out what are their CDNs, you know, Prime, video, other things that people are seeing heavily used on their networks, and how we can kind of offload some of that traffic and what would be a value for the IXP to kind of chase after next. So that's kind of the goals for the next meeting. So with that, you know, Brett, I'll lead into the Q&A portion.
Gotcha. If you guys have a question for Sam or for Robert or any of our team, if you would like to put that in the chat. I'll be happy to read it for you. There's a lot of people here, so I don't want you guys having to talk over each other, but if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat field, or if we have some silence, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question.
I would like to chime in that while people are putting their chats in, if any, today's a perfect example. If there is somebody, a CDN that you want to reach or that you think that your organization might need to reach, that you can add that in the chat, email Brent, you can, whoever that may be, and part of the February meeting will be identifying that. And so you may not be able to make it, and that's okay, but we want to hear from the constituency here that's interested in the iX on maybe some CDNs that we're not even aware of. So if you're using Box or you're using, like Robert said, some of the other Prime or any of the other CDNs that are out there delivering, there's some outliers. There's a lot of oil and gas groups that have CDNs where they're getting aggregated data and access to those. That's been a desire of some of our clients at the data center. So I just want to throw that out there that we really do want to hear what would help your organization the most, regardless if you're an enterprise user or a carrier. So, and if you're a carrier, please ask your customers, who would you like to touch and what would help the latency and communication with a particular provider.
I've got a question from Brian Sagabill. He was asking, is Snowflake classified as a CDN? Robert, Sam, either of you?
What is, I'm sorry, man, I don't know what Snowflake is.
I'm not sure if I know what it is either, Brian. Brian, you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Sure. Snowflake is a tool that's used quite a bit in the oil and gas space. It's a virtualization of SQL Oracle databases, allows us to aggregate data, blend data together for data mining and stuff. And I know that there's been a lot of effort in some of the oil and gas space to take public oil and gas data and submit it and make it available on Snowflake so that people, companies, big oil and gas companies can download it. Just a question. Just seeing if it was on there.
That's a great question, you know, and I'm looking at them right now. I'm just kind of did a search for them, and man, I think that'd be great. I think, you know, that is content, and it depends. I would think we would need to reach out to Snowflake and basically send a, you know, we can put a presentation together, and what we're gonna have to show them is how much traffic is going to be transmitted to and from Snowflake. So there would be a decision that they would ultimately have to make. But, you know, like for instance, Netflix, they wouldn't talk to us until we could deliver 5 gigs worth of traffic from them. And so James Deaton and Robert Nordmark, bless their heart, got together and we aggregated and talked to different carriers, and we were able to convince them. So it's just a matter of, you know, when we set up this committee, I think Snowflake might be a target that we say, okay, we want to reach out to Snowflake and we want to see, you know, what would it take to put their content there here at Rack 59 to make it easier, you know, if it make it to build the feasibility of bringing that traffic here closer to the Oklahoma market. So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, it would just take some effort, and we would need everyone's help to do that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate the question, Brian. Let's say anybody that's a current member of the iX, feel free to chime in and tell us about some of the advantages, some of the things that you've seen that have helped your network. Either you don't have to give numbers necessarily, but if you want to talk about the savings that you've been able to see from being a member of the exchange, feel free to jump in there and put your 2 cents in as well.
Yeah, I wanted to point out, James typed a message to everyone, James Deaton. He says, I think one of the key things to take away is the more participants lead to greater attention from national service providers and cloud environments to take interest. Each new iX participant leads to lower latency and greater performance for everyone. He says, we participate in iXs outside of the state, and they are fantastic value to keep in check the growth contracts with national transit providers while also gaining better performance. That's a wonderful thing to say, James. I couldn't have said it better. So it's really going to be, you know, the more of these meetings, the more participants we have. It's like the more interconnectivity, the more participation, thus the more value each one of us are going to be able to glean from the iX. This is not one of those situations where one company, say AtLink, is going to benefit, you know, from everybody. It's a collective effort, and the more we contribute, the more we participate, the more everyone benefits. It's a direct correlation. So, James, I think that's an important fact.
One of our early members was the Pioneer team out in the northwest part of the state. Anybody from the Pioneer team want to jump in and share how this has helped out your network? I think Judith, Josh, you guys are on here. I don't know if you've got some input, might encourage some of the other participants today on what the advantages might be.
Judith, I'll let you take that question.
I know.
Can y'all hear me?
Now
Can you hear
Yeah, we got
There you
you.
go. Sorry
ahead.
about that. Nothing like being put on the spot, but you know, we have been with Rack 59 for, you know, I don't know what our inception date was there, and I think it was when OneNet was actually out of that location, and we began working with Robert at some point. But we've enjoyed working with the team at Rack 59. When we have trouble, it's nice to make a phone call. I know we've used Kelly, who's been on site to help us with a lot of things. We are in the process of moving our data center that's located in Blanchard, Oklahoma to Rack 59. So we've been down there quite a bit. We've had great success with Brian helping us, Brian Bundy, get that project up and working. And then we also have a relation with NetFabric for support. We've had that for quite some time, so it's nice to know they're going to be a part of that team. So all I can say is that everything we've experienced has been positive, and it is nice to have a partner here in the state. We do peer outside with another iX, of course, in Dallas, but having something you know, local, so to speak, we're excited to see what's coming down the pipe. So we just appreciate it.
We appreciate you guys being here this morning. Judith, thanks for putting your 2 cents in.
You're welcome.
Brent,
Anybody else?
I
Go
would
ahead.
add to that. I mean, that Judith is right. You know, ever since we began the talks with OneNet, Robert and James, about, you know, combining some of our bandwidth usage, especially for Netflix, Akamai, and some of the others, I know has been a huge benefit to Pioneer.
Well, I appreciate that, Josh. Thank you for putting your 2 cents. James, I think you were on here as well. Would you like to share some thoughts too?
Yeah, I'll just say I miss seeing a lot of you. It's been a few years since I worked directly with you. I've been with Great Plains Network for about 3 years now, and getting to work with states all across this part of the country. But I will say that without calling out any particular providers, it was really exciting working with a number of the providers in the state and helping with working with Robert, bringing those connections up. But I just anecdotally, it was like what 50% of the traffic on some of the broadband providers, especially that were hitting a lot of the residences, 50% of the traffic was being offloaded to Akamai and Netflix CDNs at that point. I think it was even greater. I think from the OneNet perspective, it was upwards of 70% at times a day that were able to be directly sourced from those resources. And the great thing was, of course, the super low latency, right? You want your 4K Game of Thrones back then, but now it's something else, right? But I just, those are the numbers that I recall, and we're still seeing that across the networks that I work with, high levels of data be able to be moved via those CDNs. But I think the other important thing is so many, from the business perspective, even if you're not an ISP, you're using cloud environments that you want to make sure that you've got assured known paths back to those providers. And so one of the things that we found value, especially in some of the larger IXs, is the opportunity to peer directly with Google and Amazon and be able to know, that they're just a hop away and you can actually see the path that you take to get to them versus having to have a backhaul to a larger city and be depending upon that. And so that's where I see the IXs. As you have more folks, more eyeballs and more businesses come into an IX, the opportunity to bring in those big pipes directly to Azure. I saw somebody mention Microsoft, having that. We have a number of peers that we participate with Azure, and it's fantastic. Getting to that stage is the next step.
Awesome. James, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Any of our other current members want to put their 2 cents in before we kind of shut things down?
Hey, real quick, Judith, I definitely owe you lunch for the kind words. This is Brian Bundy, sales rep at Rack 59. So I'm in the chat. I'm throwing my information out there. If somebody would like to come out and look, Robert mentioned the upcoming meeting next month. Definitely want people to get involved in that. But if you want to come look, if you've never been out here, see the place, come out here. We're pretty low pressure. We want to come out here and physically see the value. If you're a visual person like me, it's definitely worth the trip.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you sharing that. All right, before we finish today, anybody have any questions for our team? Okay, great. Guys, thank you for being here this morning. Appreciate you checking in with us to hear more about what the iX is doing here in Oklahoma and Oklahoma City. Sam, thank you for sharing your thoughts this morning and your vision for what the iX could be here in Oklahoma City. Robert, thanks again for putting together your information and sharing the details of what you guys are creating here. We'll invite you guys to connect with us again in February. Hopefully we'll be in person. If not, we'll go virtual again, or maybe some hybrid approach. So keep an eye out. We'll make sure we send information out to you via email. Also, you'll find that on the Rack 59 social media pages as well. In the meantime, reach out to us if we can help you with a membership in the iX, or if you need some help on the colo side, we'd love to help you on that side as well. Thanks again, guys, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Safe
Thank you.
travels.
Thank you.